Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Yes, indeed.
Bomani Jones. How's it going, brother?
Good, man. How about you?
Doing good, doing good.
Blessed, black, and highly favored. Some people say you're the smartest man in sports. Like, literally, though. Because don't you got like a high IQ?
I mean, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't remember the last time I checked it, right? I take somebody else's word for it.
You never did an IQ test?
I mean, at some point, I guess.
Yeah.
But, I mean, people say that, and it's interesting because I know a whole lot of really smart people that work in this. Like, I don't have a handle as to why it is people have decided that that's me. But, I mean, I let them ride with it.
That's a good compliment.
Yeah, I let them ride with it.
Not a bad label to have.
No. I mean, it's worse things you can call me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, of course, you host Game Theory, your own show on HBO, but we got a lot to talk about today. Let's start off with some basketball.
All right.
Now, what's going on with the Lakers, man? Why they look
Waste
so
of a
bad?
question.
Wasteful question?
No,
Waste of
man,
a question.
because dudes is old. Like, when they got that team together.
LeBron's still scoring over 30 points a game. So
Yeah,
even though he's old, he's still busting
Yeah,
ass.
he's still there. But, like, with Russell Westbrook, it was like if you've been watching, you knew this was going to happen. Like he was old. He was at that point, but what he could do was he could put up numbers that would make you think he was better than he was. So you're like, yo, we're still putting up 25 and 10 and 10. What's the big deal? They give up more points when he's out there than they do when he's not, like the sum total. So, like, that's the big one. And then with LeBron, there was a time when having LeBron meant you were a championship contender, simply on the fact of having him. The league got better. Having him doesn't even necessarily guarantee you get into the play-in, like let alone the playoffs.
That's right.
It doesn't guarantee that anymore. So, like, with him, everybody rolls up. He's still really good, but he's not as good as he used to be. Ain't no insult in that. And so now they sorry.
Yeah. I never thought that they were going to be good. I said that from the beginning. As soon as they assembled that team, I was
thought
like,
they'd be a little better than this.
Everybody's like, the Lakers and the Nets in the championship. I'm like, no way.
No, the thing was they wasn't good last year.
That's right.
Right? They wasn't good last year, and they got a dude who ain't good no more. And people are like, all right, cool, well, it's on. Okay, buddy.
Now, what about the Nets? Brooklyn Nets. What's your thoughts?
How do we know, man? Like, they just got your man back. We'll see how it goes. Like, they should, in theory, win the East. Like, Kyrie and Kevin Durant
Really?
should be enough for you to win the East. You would think.
Even when you got more complete teams, though, like the Bucks.
Hey, man.
Or
You
even
know,
like the 76ers,
the Nets
man.
don't play no defense at all.
Yeah, and I said that last year, and then in the playoffs it got going. Like, if Kyrie plays last year, they win it. And that's even with Harden out there on a bad leg. They probably win it all last year if they didn't. The thing that gets me about the Nets is they're not interesting. Like, forget about, like, just the straight basketball. They got all those dudes
right.
that they've had there. They're in this city. I mean, the city don't care about them, but they're here, right? Like, all of this stuff. But they're not interesting. Like, there's no fun to it. Like, Kyrie, we used to have Space Cadets back in the day, but they were funny, right? Like, we would laugh at them when they, like, if we had a dude in 1995 wearing Ankh earrings and talking the stuff that Kyrie was talking, he would also have jokes. My man don't ever have no jokes.
He's serious.
Right. And so that he means every word of that craziness, right? So then we look at them, and it's like, okay, when y'all are good, y'all are really good, and it's cool to watch. But you don't see anybody that's just like, yo, I love them. Yo, that's my squad. That's the wildest part about it. When they went to Miami in the way that they did, they became villains. And so, like, if you roll for the bad guy in the movies, you could ride with them. If you roll for players trying to get money, you would ride with them, right? Or doing what they wanted to do. You had all these reasons that you could jump in and love them. Don't nobody love these dudes. Probably don't even love these dudes.
Yeah, they don't have no. It's no culture there, and what you said is very true. I think the reason people don't love them is because I don't think Kyrie loves the game. And the reason I say that is because he's always finding an excuse not to play. He said this week, can we get another day off in between games? I'm like, yo, you just got back and started playing back to back.
When that dude missed a game, I think it was either last year or this year, I can't remember. But he missed a stretch of games for personal reasons. And, you know, once people say that, it's kind of like, okay, guess we got to let that ride.
Yeah.
And then we looked up and it was his birthday. Now, I don't know if the personal reason was his birthday, right? I have no confirmation of that. But when we look up and realize it's your birthday, it's, dog,
Yeah.
no.
You don't want to take a day off on your birthday, though?
I work more than 82 of them. like that's the whole thing about it. Hey, man, you play in the NBA every day, your birthday. After the game, it's going to be your birthday, too.
And I think that's why when certain commentators are hard on him, like the Shannon Sharps, the Stephen A. Smiths, I think what they're essentially trying to say is he's always finding a reason not to play. So let's not say it's the vaccine and he's taking a stand. Like, if it wasn't the vaccine, it would be something else.
Yeah, we also getting old. And we are at that point where we look, but like every now and then something happens with a player or a dude, and I'm just like, man, I just want to put my arm around you and be like, hey, young fella, let me run a little game by you, right?
Yeah.
With Kyrie, if you were like the age, like Stephen A's hard on him, right? You know, you mid-50s, and you look at a dude like this, it's hard to just look at it as just like a straight ahead, this is somebody my age that's doing this. It's hard not to look at it like, man, these kids is out here on some bullshit, man. Like, I just don't understand why they behave like that. And I'm just old enough to look at Kyrie and be like, hey, little brother, let me come over here and holler at you. But he would be the dude that if you tried to holler at you would tell you that you didn't know nothing.
Yeah, but I mean, even if you are older, it's like LeBron has been the face of the league for however he's been, right? But for 15 seasons, he only missed 71 games.
Right.
So he's out there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's like, what excuse does any player have when you see that?
Michael Jordan played 39 minutes a game when he was 40 years old with the Wizards. Like, he was out there every night with it. You know, but something happened, and if you ask me where the NBA went wrong, and it's not even the whole league's fault, but this happened. When the Warriors won 73 games and didn't win a championship, the regular season stopped mattering. I think for a lot of people. And I think for a lot of players, like the idea of winning as many games in the regular season, what's that matter? Only thing that matters is you win the championship, right? And so that load management stuff was overrated. It wasn't that many people like truly missing games, and it was only like 2 or 3 of them that you actually cared about if they missed a game. But you see it. We don't watch regular season games with anticipation like in the ways that we used to. Last night, the Bucks and the Sixers played. You could make an argument 2 best players in the NBA are in that game of similar size. It comes down at the end to Giannis blocking Embiid's shot to win it, like all of that stuff. Don't nobody care. Like, don't nobody really get into it in that way.
Know that they played last
That's
night.
what I'm saying, right? Like
I don't know why I got caught in the Nets-Pistons game. I didn't even turn to the Bucks.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I was
Like,
watching the high school game.
right, and then it's funny, you caught it Nets-Pistons. Have you ever looked at the New York ratings on the Nets? Like when they play on TV, nobody watches. Like, it's hard to get people charged up about the regular season. Like, everything the NBA wants, except for the Lakers being good. Like, they prefer that, but you don't have that. But in the East, you finally got the East back. You got a good team in Miami. You got a good team in Philadelphia. You have a good team in New York, even if it's the Nets, right? But they're still here. Boston had the best record in the East as a couple days ago, but they're right there in that mix. It's all that stuff.
Yeah.
How much do you hear people just talk about the NBA? Just on that. It doesn't happen like that anymore.
So who wins it this year, in your opinion?
And see, that's kind of the fun part. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I think we all guessing. Going in, I thought Miami was going to win the East and probably Phoenix in the West. If I had to guess, it's probably going to be Phoenix. Like, think about this. Phoenix went to the finals last year. Phoenix is killing it this year. They killed it without Chris Paul. They killed it with Chris Paul. When's the last time you heard somebody just talking about the Suns?
That's right. Golden State was my preseason pick, so I'm sticking with them. But, yeah, it's going to be between Golden State, Phoenix, and I wouldn't sleep on Memphis either.
I would like it to go to Memphis.
I don't know why people say
Philly, though? You won't put Philly in there?
No. People say Memphis not now, but why not?
And I just want good things to happen for the city of Memphis. Like, there's something about a place, like I'm from Houston, right? We country and we don't hide it, and it's fine. Memphis is on a whole nother level of that one, right? Like, this is who we are. This is how we get down. It's really not like anybody else. All of this stuff. And they got a basketball team that look like, they scream and whoop that trick at basketball.
That's right. That's
NBA games, right? Like, not playground games, NBA games. Yeah, I want them to win. I would love for them to win as much as they possibly could.
And they led by another country ass nigga, my South Carolina brethren, Ja Morant.
Yes.
Y'all see where Ja from. That's country.
Because which town is he from?
It's a town close to something. I can't remember the exact town, but it's like near the something area.
But that's the thing about South Carolina. If you close to whatever the close is in South Carolina, you ain't close to nothing.
You ain't close to nothing.
Like, I got a theory about places. It's about dots, right? So, like, you look at a map. Every state got a dot, right? But that dot, like, gets you fucked up and think that places are bigger than they are.
Absolutely.
So, like, a place like Birmingham, Alabama, it's the place you've heard of in Alabama. It's got a dot.
Yep.
But these dots ain't all the same. They don't even always give South Carolina a dot. They're like, hey, Georgia, North Carolina in between.
That's
and Ja
real.
Morant is for something that is close to something that might have a dot.
It's Dalzell. And I'm from there, lived there my whole life and never heard of Dalzell. But when they say, oh, it's near Sumter, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yes, you know that because you're from South Carolina.
That's right.
The rest of us are like, yeah, I just be trying to get out of there fast, dog. 85, quick as I can.
Now, you got a new show on HBO called Game Theory. What's the format of the show? I caught like the Stephen A. Smith conversation. So what's the format? Is that like it's an interview show or?
It's got interviews. Like,
okay.
It's hard to say what we got a little bit of everything at this point with the way that we're doing this. So we're coming off the top in some form or fashion kind of talking about the news of the sports week, right? But we do it on Sunday. We do it once a week. We got to tape it in the afternoon. So I can't just respond something like right away. So the Will Smith thing, for example, happened like 30 minutes before we aired.
Oh, damn.
So we're not going to be in a position to like turn that around. But I'm going to give you something off the top with that. We're doing interviews. The first couple shows, we had Stephen A. Smith the first show. We had Vince Staples on the second one. We have Roy Wood Jr. We got Tracy Morgan coming up on the show this week. We got little interstitial content, pre-produced stuff. Some of it's scripted, some of it not, that we just kind of throw in there to kind of give you a palate cleanser. And then what we want to do after that is like a longer essay that's going to explore something in sports. But I got a team of 6 comedy writers behind us to help bolster up all of that stuff. We got a real strong field department, so we go out here and record stuff. And so what we're starting with is, if you watch any stuff I've done on ESPN, people like to hear what I think about something, right? Like, hey, what you think about this, whatever it happens to be. It might be sports, it might be not, right? But people just want to hit me and they go, what do you think about this? Okay, cool. So I'm coming in the meeting on Wednesday like, this is what I think about this. How do we put this together? It might be we put it together just by writing something out. It might be we put this together and we come up with some kind of field piece that we can go out there and shoot with people or with actors or whatever it is. But it all starts with what I'm thinking, and now we're like, what's the best way to put this together? Not we're going to put this together like this. Like, what's the best way? So when we started figuring out what the show was going to be, so in November, I'm like, okay, let's start figuring out what some of these long essays are going to be. And I was like, our first show is on Selection Sunday. We're going to be in the Mike Krzyzewski Farewell Tour. All right, so let's do something on the legacy of Coach K. And I stopped and I was thinking to myself, I was like, so why is it that black people don't rock with Duke like that? Because I sure as hell don't. But I'm like, but all of us don't. Like, how is it? Not like they was the only team with white dudes. And then I stopped and thought about it, man. If you of that age, all the teams we grew up loving, man, they beat the shit out of. Georgetown.
Michigan.
Michigan. UNLV got them that one time.
Yeah.
Then they came back around. Temple, Arkansas, all of them. So I basically just taped this whole thing about how Duke has just, every team that black people loved, they beat. And then I'm talking to my producer, and he says, so what if we did a museum exhibit at a Black History Museum about Coach K terrorizing Black America? So what do? We build up an exhibit of Coach K called The Boys in Blue. Coach K's March Across America. We build the whole exhibit. We call it the Schomburg Center in Harlem. And we're like, hey, we got this idea. Would you let us host this? And, of course, we're afraid they think we're going to, like, disparage the name of the place. We laid it out for them. Man, the director of the exhibit is in the damn chute by the time we wound up doing it, right? Then it's like, hey, man, it's Michigan. Okay. You think Jalen would be down to come through? So I called Jalen Rose. I'm like, Jalen, big favor. Would you mind just stopping through for the exhibit? Jalen show up in, like, $25,000 worth of clothes. Come stand, and it's part of our exhibit on this. You know what I mean? So, like, that's how we're coming up with this. And we got things and topics that we can talk about that I don't feel like you're going to see anywhere else. This past week, we did a thing on HBCU sports. And, where everybody's like, oh, man, now all the kids are going to go. And I'm like, you sure this is a good idea? And so now we got a place where we can get on HBO and spend 10 minutes not just talking about HBCU sports, but in a way that I think is legitimately and truly relatable to people who didn't go to HBCU, people who don't even know no black people, whatever it is. It just gives you a look at all this stuff. And so I think how do we make this three-dimensional? How do we put this in a space where we can make this as deep as possible? Because I can do a bunch of things. My team can do a bunch of things. So we don't have to be standard in any of this. We can just figure out what the best thing is that we can do. Oh, and we go out every week, hit the streets, bring the cameras out, and just talk to people outside about, like, what's going on in sports. So you get that element, too, of, like, actual people being in it.
See, I like when real conversations come out of, whatever it is I came to this show for. Like, if I'm coming to a Bomani Jones show and he's talking sports, the Duke, in beating the black teams thing is phenomenal. Right? But then it gets to a larger conversation of what is blackness. Because I think about Duke had mad black players, but I also remember Jalen Rose saying how corny they were. And how they were bougie and elitist. And I was like, well, that ain't my type of black people. And that was me being young and ignorant because black people aren't monolithic, but that's what I thought.
Yeah, and we had like the 20-minute version because we had to cut it down to like 8. We were getting into all of that stuff, right? Like that's where we can go. Or you get like, we had Roy Wood Jr. come on, and he's been doing some work with Major League Baseball trying to increase black participation in baseball in various ways. And he grew up in Birmingham. And he's a Dolphins fan. And I could never understand how he was a Dolphins fan. And he explained it very easily. Well, growing up when I grew up in Birmingham, the GDs wore black, the Bloods wore red, the Crips wore blue. Okay. Cowboys, Steelers, Cowboys, 49ers, Raiders, all off the map. Can't rock with those, right? And so then that winds up me. I didn't have a chance to get into it, but a cat I know with a cat he knows who basically became like middle management GDs and explaining how all these, so now we're having this discussion that goes into all these places because sports are the entryway into this stuff. And then we can go to other places and you're not going to be particularly successful like with a mass marketed straight ahead sports show. There ain't that many people that are into it. Like with ESPN, you go look at the numbers of people who watch shows from day to day. The numbers aren't bad, obviously, but nobody's watching, like, it's not 5 million people watching SportsCenter or something like that. But it's people that watch repeatedly over and over again and make that network a part of their lives. You're not going to go off of ESPN and think you're going to hit people with nuts and bolts sports and they're going to watch it. Like, you're going to have to give them something that applies to their lives more broadly, and that's what we're going for.
I wanted to ask you back to basketball right fast. Everybody, especially recently, been having the GOAT conversation, right? LeBron James, Michael Jordan. What's your thoughts? Why?
It's Michael Jordan. This isn't a discussion. Like, I think it's a discussion for you if LeBron is the guy of your era. And I'll admit, you take it back like 13 years ago. I sat and I broke it down. I was looking at like all these different attributes of a basketball player. And I was like, LeBron's better at this than Mike. LeBron's better at this than Mike. All that stuff. You run through it. Man, then you pull up a clip on YouTube of Mike, and you're like, all right, I was tripping. My bad. Like, in the final argument, none of that stuff really matters in the same way. Like, you try to itemize it. You can try to go to your basic stats or whatever it is. If you were here for this Mike thing, and you've been here with this LeBron thing, you can be wildly impressed by what LeBron has done. But somebody got to finish number 2. There's a lot of dope songs that never get to number 1.
That's right.
That's a dope song that just didn't make it to number 1 all time. He was the best player in the league for 10 years, about, give or take. That's crazy uncommon. But he ain't Mike. Only The Last Dance came out. I was like, okay, y'all see this now, right? Like, do you understand?
I don't even got Bron at 2, sadly.
There's an argument that he's not. Kareem has probably got a better argument for 2. Wilt might have a better argument for 2.
Kobe. Magic Johnson.
Magic, I go with. Kobe, I don't think is in this discussion.
I think Kobe's the second closest thing to Michael I've seen.
But see, that's what it is. He is the closest thing to Mike. The thing I give Kobe credit for, and I knocked him for a long time for it on this, you trying to be Mike. Everybody was trying to be Mike for like 15 years. He was just so good that you could actually notice it.
But that says something though, right?
It does. Oh yeah, it says something. It says that he's a really good player. But like LeBron just in a different class as Kobe is.
I think physically, with Jordan, right, and Kobe, there's a term we used to always use, we don't even use anymore for a lot of this new generation. A will to win.
Yeah, he got it.
Will your team to victory.
Yeah, he got it. But we only talk about it when they actually win. When Kobe was out here barely making the playoffs and not making the playoffs without Shaq, those don't count when people bring up the will to win part. That's my only thing when we make the will to win argument is we only talk about it when it really happens. It's like Eli Manning, really good in all the clutch moments because you only talk about the ones where it went okay.
Word.
Like the example on that one with Manning, not to belabor it, but he won 8 playoff games as a starting quarterback. It was in those 2 Super Bowl seasons. They didn't win a single playoff game outside those two Super Bowl seasons. So you're going to tell me none of those games counted?
Nope.
None of them were big?
Yeah.
They didn't need to win none of those?
Nope.
You know what I mean?
Not as a Giants fan. Nope.
But that's why y'all been sorry all the other years except for that one, right. But that's the thing for me with Kobe is Kobe almost like if you made a music comparison, Kobe's a dude that his hottest 16 are probably hotter than anybody else's 16. And he got a bunch of good albums that go there. But he hit us with some bricks, too. Like, he was rapping, but he hit us with some bricks that were there. How much do the bricks matter? It all depends on how much you like him in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, he's 5-2 in NBA Finals.
Yeah, but then there's the years you don't go to the finals, right?
Yeah.
And so how much do those matter? And so that's the thing with Jordan. Jordan was 6-0 in the finals. Yeah, and then we ignore the times that they didn't make the finals. LeBron is, I forget what the record is now off the top of my head. I want to say like 4-7 or something like that in the finals. But we don't give them credit for the fact that they got to the finals 11 times. Like we bend it how we want to because this stuff don't matter. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I think with Jordan it's because once Jordan figured it out, he never let it go.
He never let it go, and he was wise enough. It's hard to win that 4th one. Like you play all those games and all the wear and tear on your body, and when it was time to play the 4th one, Jordan wasn't there. So we never got to see what might have been that struggle season, like that 4th year for the Lakers when they lost in the second round to San Antonio.
Yeah.
It's not that they were worse, right? It's not that Shaq wasn't good anymore. It's not that Kobe wasn't good anymore. They played an extra season of basketball after the seasons were over, you know? And so Jordan never had to come out and play that season in front of us. And the first time he was on it, when he retired, he didn't have nothing left, right? His dad dies. He's, you know, and you saw that in The Last Dance. Right. I thought that was one of the clearest things that I could not grasp the idea of how exhausted it must have been for him. And I didn't grasp the idea that he was only 29 because I was like 12. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't see that. But him only being 29, it burned him out. And that's what gets guys when they get to that point.
And you know, it's funny, back then we didn't have the language to say he needed a mental health break.
Yeah.
He was mentally and emotionally exhausted. He was grieving. So it's like now when I see these players, these athletes take these breaks, I'm like, yeah, let them.
Yeah.
Because back then they didn't have the language. He went away for gambling and this and that. No, his dad died, idiots.
And even if his dad hadn't died, I'm Michael Jordan carrying the weight of the league on my shoulders. And he was so good at making it look like it wasn't no big deal. But it is. You're right. We didn't have the terms, or even we may have had the terms. We didn't have the wherewithal. Mike just being like, yo, I need to take a break. Break from what? You rich.
That's right.
Because once you're rich, don't nobody care about anything about your heart. So ever. You get a little bit of money, they think you just rub that shit on your shoulder and it don't hurt no more.
We push people. And then when they slap somebody at the Oscars, everybody's like,
yeah, that dude, though. I can't.
Break it down. What's your thoughts?
I thought it was a clown move. 100%. And this is why. He has been pushed. And I know he feels like he's been pushed. But he sat up there and laughed. And then he looked over and was like, oh, I realized that actually that's not funny in this house. And then I feel like he said to himself, what would Tupac do? Right?
This guy is crazy.
Think about this, though. Didn't he even talk about that in his book, apparently, about
he talked about also, too, the laughter comes from when he's uncomfortable and nervousness. And I think that's that Hollywood shit, too.
Yeah.
You know, like, wait a minute.
But the looming specter of Tupac is over his life at all times because of the woman that he's with, right? And he had a real, I know what Pac would do right now. Pac would go slap the shit out of him. And so he gets up there and takes his slow walk, slap Chris Rock. He slaps Chris Rock in the face. Don't knock him down. Chris Rock still keep going. He comes back, he sits down, and he screams. And I'm like, so what exactly did you do here? Because you wasn't protecting your wife. She wasn't in danger. That wasn't what that was. You wanted to show us that you was a man right now. You wanted to show us that, you ain't going to tolerate that. But we done seen you tolerate too much already for us to change our minds at this point. You should have rolled up on him at the after party if it was that important. Or said something in your speech if it was that important. But I just thought he embarrassed himself.
I agree that he was trying to prove something, but if you read his book, it's because he used to watch his mom get beat by his dad. And he said his whole life he felt like a coward and a punk because he never intervened.
Yep, and he didn't look much different slapping Chris Rock on stage. Like somebody made. I think Howard Stern said that if it was Jason Momoa, he wouldn't have got up there and done nothing. Probably not, right? And look, everybody picked their spots. Like I ain't mad on that part necessarily.
I think he would have.
Yeah, I think anybody.
You think he'd have rolled up and slapped Aquaman in the face?
Yeah, I'll tell you why.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you why. Because you look at a 53-year-old man who. We've never seen him get anything. Like, he's never had any controversies, never snapped. The angriest we've ever seen him was when his daddy left him on Fresh Prince and he, fell into Uncle Phil's arms.
Which was fake, right.
So I think he really did just snap in that moment. Not justifying it, but I think he just snapped.
Snap don't wall slow.
I think it would have been anybody.
Snap don't wall slow. Snap don't stroll.
Now, it would have been a different.
That's all I'm saying. Snap don't stroll. We've seen snapped. Snap don't stroll.
Snap the stroll.
But I would say this: that stroll got him up there to be able to do that. Because if he would have been aggressive, Chris Rock would have been.
Yeah, if he'd have ran up there,
Chris Rock would have been great.
Maybe.
But he came up. Chris Rock's a comedian, so Chris Rock's thinking it's going to be a funny.
But see, this is that point right there is why I'm like, see, this is why I don't find that impressive. You like, yeah, if he had rolled up there, Chris would have been ready to fight. Why you need to roll up on somebody who you think is not ready to fight?
Yeah, I just don't think we're having the right conversations.
What conversation should we be having?
I think it should be a conversation about mental health. I think it should be a conversation about healing, about men knowing how to process their feelings outside of violence. And, I really think we watched a mental breakdown. Not excusing any of it. He still got to deal with all the consequences of his actions. And then also, what about Chris? Chris is a guy who talked about being bullied his whole life and how, he'd always be the person that makes somebody laugh too hard or he'd be laughing too hard and somebody would attack him because they couldn't attack the person they wanted to. Yeah. So he's re-traumatized and probably a bunch of old triggers came up for him. It's just like there's a larger conversation other than just a joke and a slap for us to be had.
I'll be honest. The dilemma for me about it is I can't tell for myself how out of bounds the joke was, if the joke was out of bounds. And the reason I say that is I understand, like with alopecia and the idea of like losing your hair, and particularly for women, right, where hair is so tied to femininity and everything else and how it must feel, so forth and so on. But the reason it's tricky for me is the woman in question is one that we've seen look bad as hell for 25 years with short hair, right? Like the idea to me that Jada Pinkett is somehow less beautiful or less feminine without hair, it's hard for me to grasp because I've seen her be so beautiful without hair. But that's me from the outside, right? In the inside to her, it still feels like, in all likelihood, this whole thing has happened. So, like, I would not think if I was Chris Rock, and I don't know what he knew about. I didn't realize she had alopecia until people bring it up. But him not knowing it, I can see why he thinks that this is just kind of fair game, right? You have short hair and you are in very good shape and you are very pretty, just like Demi Moore. I can see how he would think that. But Will, you know, with all the other stuff that come up, like you say, that ain't about no one joke.
No,
this is about life.
That was all projection.
I would say this too. It's, you know, remember a couple years ago, Chris Rock went at her before.
Like 5 years ago.
5 years ago. So that could be those type of feelings that came back up. You know, we already had a conversation how we don't necessarily might not like you because of the jokes you said that time. So now when you say it again, and when I look over there and I see my wife's pissed off, I'm trying to protect her feelings. Not to say that it was right.
Yeah.
But then you lose it because at the end of the day, what are we supposed to do as men?
Hold on.
Protect and provide.
Were you trying to protect her feelings or were you trying to impress her? Because those are two different things. And that's my thing. If you were trying to impress her, you lost me. Right? If you legitimately felt like I have to defend her honor in this moment, and it's questionable whether her honor was defamed. Okay, cool. But that ain't what he wanted to do. I think he wanted to show us, look at me. I'm a man now. Bro, you're 53. It's too late to tell us that. Either we believed it or we didn't. And the people who didn't think you were a man, all they doing is pulling out them same receipts. And isn't he going to go sit down at that red table and go talk about this? Do you think that's going to make anything better? Because I don't think that's going to make anything better.
I think I really want to see him just heal, man, because I really think he was just projecting pain and hurt. I don't think it had much to do with any of those jokes. Yeah. Other than maybe he had got tired of being pushed and pushed and pushed. But also, too, everybody that's been making jokes about Will never been in the same room with him.
Fair.
Will might have been did that to somebody.
No, that's fair.
You know?
But this is where I do feel bad for him is we knew he was going to win that best actor Oscar, right? Like sometimes the night just shape up and you know what direction it's going in. It was his time to win that Oscar. We ain't talking about that.
At all.
We ain't talking about that at all. And that rambling speech that he made, it's talking about, you know, Richard Williams was defending his family. Bro, you was defending your pride. Like, don't overlap these things. I ain't see one time in that movie about Richard Williams about him rolling up and slapping somebody in the face. I did see him get stomped out, right? Like, in the name of protecting his family. That wasn't what you was trying to do, man. You wanted us to know that you was gangster with it. And we still don't believe that you are.
Yeah, I don't want him to be gangster, but I can clearly look at that situation and see something is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, that don't happen. Like, that was a glitch in the Matrix. Like, the Oscars, Will Smith slaps Chris Rock. Will has never been in no situation ever.
Well, I guess he was trying to compare in the scene where the dude was talking disrespectful to his daughter, Richard's daughter, and he went to approach the dude, and then he wanted to get stomped down. That's what I think he was saying because in the movie, you didn't see the movie, Charlamagne, one of the street local dudes was being disrespectful to his daughter. So he put his daughters in the car and went back and approached the dude and got stomped out crazy. That's what I guess he was comparing it to.
Yeah. Now, I just think it's a lot of dudes out here watching that who like the idea of going and roughing somebody up for disrespecting you.
And that's whack.
And a lot of women who love the idea of a man going out there and fighting somebody for them. We have all met what you gonna do about it? And you're like, what you gonna do about it? Like, we've all met that person, right? And they all come together. But I think in the end, what should have been the biggest moment of his career, that ain't what we talking about.
And that's why the conversation should be, first of all, we should be asking what does protect black women look like? Because I don't think it was that.
No.
Right? I think it's actually doing the work on yourself, going to therapy, getting some healing so you can show up as a good black man for your sisters, your mother, your wife, everything. That wasn't that. He needs to go get more healing. And I think he knows that.
I hope so, because I actually thought when the book came out, and I didn't read it, but like seeing the things that came out, hey, man, I wouldn't have told y'all none of that stuff that he put in that book. Like, he has a level of comfort with, and there was a level of vulnerability there that I admit I ain't at that place in my journey. No, sir.
Well, he's trying to take the mask
exactly,
off.
And that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like those were like positive steps in that, but this felt like a mask. Like, he threw a mask on in order to go slap Chris Rock in the face.
I feel like he took the mask off, but they say sometimes when you take the mask off, some skin comes with it.
Yeah,
That's what I think happened in this moment.
yeah. I want to know more about Chris Rock. He got slapped in the face on television. Can you imagine getting slapped in the face on television?
No.
And kept the show going.
Yes.
Like, didn't miss a beat. Like, he's a little flustered, rightfully so, but just kept the show going. Still presented the award.
Yeah.
Man.
And wasn't nobody coming over to him after, are you okay?
That's what I'm saying.
He
And all
couldn't press
that.
charges.
Yeah, that was funny. They were like, the police asked if he wanted to press charges. Yeah, that'll make it better. Yeah. That's how I'm going.
Jim Carrey was like, I'd have pressed charges.
Yeah, I know. I know why a white person would have said that. This ain't gonna get you no more respect in the streets. Like, nah, man, don't worry. I'm gonna call the cops. What are you gonna do then? What? Security ain't stopping from coming on the stage. You think the Beverly Hills Police or whatever municipality is gonna be dealing with this? Please.
I'm suing, though. I don't see the problem with that. Jim Carrey said $200 million. I think that's too low a number.
Man,
He ain't gonna sue.
in the end, whether Chris Rock was right or wrong, he did get slapped in the face, and there is a reduction of dignity when that happens. You are not getting any of that back at the courthouse. The courthouse does not give you back dignity. They just give you a little bit of money.
Yeah.
All right.
It's crazy how age is such an interesting thing, though, because, like, 20 years ago, I'd have been like, yeah, Chris Rock a punk. But now I'm like, he handled it. I'm loving his professionalism. Like, damn, he handled that shit well.
Yeah.
He kept the show going.
Because otherwise, what he would have had to do was jump off the stage and go get him.
That's
Because
right.
by the time he realized what had happened, Will Smith is already walking back to his seat.
And I'm surprised Will Smith walked back, not even looking at him, because I would be expecting a kick in the back of my neck or kicking me off stage or something.
Yeah, that is that I'm going to turn my back on you part. At least he kept moving.
different.
Like, if he had done it and turned his back on him and, like, thrown his hands up, like, okay, that's the height of disrespect. That actually, if that would have made this all the better. If Will Smith would have slapped him in the face, turned around and been like, yeah, what?
Yeah.
That'd have made the night.
A question. You can do this conversation on Game Theory, but do you think these conversations have place on ESPN or Fox Sports? Because I'm watching Fox Sports. I'm like, why is this being discussed on Fox Sports?
Well, I think it has a place on Fox Sports at the end of March when we just don't have as much to talk about. You know, like when we don't have as much to talk about, we got to cut this Kool-Aid with something. You got to put a little orange juice in it sometime to get it across. And so what happens is you look up and you see that this is a topic that is like broadly being discussed. And in the end, the best sports content is typically lifestyle content. Like we're finding where that overlap is. But if everybody's talking about Will Smith and Chris Rock, then you going to talk about it a little bit. The problem is you can't get up there and talk about it like it's sports. You know, and that's where it can often happen. Like, we can't give you 15 minutes of, you know, whose side you're on, who you got, what's the spread, right? Like, you can't do that. But I do think the audience, and the audience is like largely men, and this is a topic that really resonates with men, and it gets into all the masculine stuff that everybody wants to get into. There's room for it. Now, the question is everybody really, like, good at it? Like, is everybody qualified? And I don't say qualified because you don't need no qualifications to talk about this. But you don't always want to hear everybody talk about this stuff. So I feel like I do well in the overlap space. And so I go do that. But you can't go tell somebody else who works there. They're like, well, he talked about Chris Rock. I want to talk about Chris Rock. Yeah, but you're not good at it. I mean, I guess you can tell them, but nobody's going to do that.
Yeah.
That's the dilemma I think that comes up a lot when it comes to social issues also is I can do that and talk about this stuff and not cost nobody no money while also making a point. Can't everybody do that?
That's
but
right.
if you see and be like, oh, well, you let him do that, you got to let me do it. Kinda. I see your argument. And then it goes. So, yeah, I think there's room to talk about this stuff, but I also think you need to be creative in figuring out exactly how to do it. Like my podcast on Monday, that was the first thing that we talked about because people come to me for that overlap stuff.
Do you think when you look at ESPN, like you talk about the people, they had the personnel there to have these discussions. They didn't really utilize them. Like, I don't think they utilized you the way they should. You know what I mean? They kind of ran off Jamel Hill. It's like, but now they bring in like somebody like my good sister Angela Rye because now they want to have these conversations. Like, what changed?
So my thought has always been what really changed was the news cycle. So think about this. 2020, summer, the George Floyd thing is the biggest story in the news. And it was the biggest story on ESPN. ESPN was covering that like MSNBC would cover it because that was what the news cycle dictated. When the news cycle dictated, we talk about Kaepernick, you talked about Kaepernick. What made things tricky, I think, for the whole industry, not just ESPN, but the whole industry, Donald Trump went from being a joke in early 2016 to being real as steel in August of 2016 with the nomination to being the president of the United States in November. So it's one thing when Trump is in these primaries and he's winning them, but he's winning them with like 18% of the vote, 20% of the vote. It's not that many people jumping on board. You don't have to take it seriously. But then those races get smaller and smaller and those candidates go down and those numbers get bigger. And now it's Trump wins primary with 40% of the vote. Now it's Trump wins primary with 50 or 60% of the vote. Now that number that says 50 or 60 is a big enough number that we got to act like those people matter. Wow. Like we have to act like their opinions are not outlier opinions anymore, but mainstream opinions. And then when that happens, you get a pushback from a lot of those folks to be like, hey, I feel like what we believe is not being expressed in public, and all you're hearing is this liberal stuff. Well, the thing about the liberal stuff is, if you look at it, the culture at corporations is in line with what people would consider to be liberal. Like, there's fairness that you have to have for people on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, all of that stuff. In the office, you have to have it. Don't matter how right-wing you are, no matter what they say on the news, or what they say on Fox News, their office has to have a culture that's more in line with being liberal, right? So you're going to hear more of that stuff, no matter what the network is, publicly projected. Because that stuff that people vote for, you can't actually get on TV and say that. You can get elected for saying something that would get you fired. So, you know, when you you stop and think about that, the stuff that Donald Trump said to get him elected, how much of that stuff could you say at work?
None of it.
You just couldn't do it.
No way.
You couldn't do it. But the people, there's so many people who actually feel and believe that stuff that they're looking up and they're seeing the opposite being projected, and now they're mad. And so networks worry about what the viewers think, and they get some research that tells them one thing or another, and then, okay, things are going to probably shift in a different direction. But then if you look at like the years 2017 to like 2020, it wasn't like ESPN had all these major social stories that people were ignoring, that people were acting like weren't there. I was talking about them on my podcast and stuff all the time. When we had High Noon, we would talk about a lot of those things. But a lot of loud people that I think were disingenuous in their concerns about these issues, they scream until somebody heard them, right? And enough white people say something, we act like we got to take their word for it no matter what, or like we have to respect it. So they scream, they say it, and people felt like, okay, the content maybe needs to go a little bit back towards sports. For whatever it's worth, when they made some of those changes on a lot of those shows, the ratings did, in fact, improve, right? And so if they believe that the ratings are going to improve by doing that stuff, then yeah, that's what they're going to wind up doing. But I haven't, personally, I can't speak for anybody else, I ain't had no situation working there where there was something of consequence that I wanted to talk about, that people are like, no, you can't do it. Not here. Not this place. That has not happened to me one time while I worked there. And so I think that if something were to happen and the cops were to kill somebody again like George Floyd and it affected the people like George Floyd did, you're going to turn on SportsCenter and they're going to be on there talking about George Floyd. Like, I do legitimately believe that. I don't think that the company is nearly as ideological about this stuff as people believe that they are. Like, I don't think there's anybody up high that's like, no, we are not going to express those viewpoints. I think it's a lot of people trying to keep their jobs, get their bonuses, and do whatever they think is going to get that money and get those people to come in.
Do you have more freedom at HBO or ESPN?
It's a different kind of freedom, I would say. The thing with HBO is I got creator freedom because of the nature of the format. So like with ESPN, you're doing a 30-minute show and people want you to react to what happened yesterday in sports. You know, really, how much freedom do you
Yeah.
It's not artistic freedom as much as like the freedom of the structure of a show. Like, doing radio. Doing it, like, at least in talk in particular, doing a midday show is totally different than doing a morning show.
Of course.
Morning show, we got to do these reads. We got to get your traffic update. We got to hit you with this weather. Now I got 3 minutes to talk about whatever it is that I want to talk about. Midday, I can get out here and stretch out because I'm talking to sales guys, right? Like people aren't in a hurry trying to figure out what they're going to do. So there's more freedom there. With HBO, I got the creative freedom of, again, we can go build out a museum exhibit and stuff like that. You can cuss a little bit more, stuff like that. But like the content and the stuff that I actually want to talk about, I have not had anything come up yet in producing this show on HBO where I've been like, man, I wish I could talk about that on ESPN. I can do it. You just got to be, for lack of a better term, you just got to be good at it, right? Like John Skipper was the previous president at ESPN, called me in the office once, and he said, you know what I like about you is that you can be provocative without getting us in trouble. Not everybody can do that. Like, I can find the point that you hear, and it might make you sit up right fast, but then you're like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Some people can't get that reaction unless they get out here and say something wild, or if they say something crazy.
That's the Breakfast Club. That's the Breakfast Club. We right on that line.
Yeah.
Not too much where we get us in trouble, a couple times, but majority of the time, just enough.
No, we've definitely been over the line, but
we didn't get in trouble though.
Yeah.
But you just can't. The thing is, you can't predict human behavior, so
That's
you
true.
never know what's going to really
Offend
make
somebody.
everybody go nuts.
No, like the thing with Jamel that happened with the Trump tweet.
Yeah.
It was a little bit foreseeable. But what wasn't foreseeable, and what I'll always say about that, because that gave me pause. It didn't give me pause necessarily because I didn't get where the network was coming from, because I did. Their thing is, come on, man, you said that about that dude. You know what I was going to set people off, which is, I don't think, an unfair argument. But what I didn't expect and what I noticed when that happened was how many of them people weren't people. When I started going through and seeing those tweets, it was like, wow, that account was just started 15 minutes ago. This English doesn't appear to be written by a native speaker. All of this. It was obviously a coordinated effort to put this out there and to make that a thing. Do I think that people were as offended? Not really. But the impression of a social media fire had started. And then the people who make decisions, they're not going through clicking these individual profiles to see if these are trolls or bots or whatever. All they see is, this is trending. Yo, we're getting calls from these people. Oh, man, this has turned into like a really big, giant thing. But how many of those people behind it were actually people? That's the part that when this stuff comes up that gives me pause and concern is, yeah, you don't know how people are going to react, but we got a general idea how people are going to react. What we don't know is who's going to decide to dishonestly use our words to infuriate other people then charge up their base.
And also, too, with the Jamel thing, people forget they didn't want Jamel to get in the way of that Disney-Fox merger at the time. You know what I mean? Because Trump could have nixed that, at the time.
But if even, like, you look at how it played out with, like, how Trump reacted and everything else. She just became an avatar for people. Like, I look at what happens with me often with things that I do and the people who decide that they gonna come at me, right? Like, it's hard to make the argument about how irrelevant I am when you talk about me all the time. But hey, some things aren't for me to understand. Maybe I'm not the smartest guy in sports. I can't grasp that concept. But the decision has been made by a lot of people that I look and sound like something that they can gang up on. It doesn't really have anything to do with me. It doesn't have but so much to do with my content, but it's the idea that somebody, I almost can't even say my age anymore because I'm not that young. I'm 41 now, right? Like, I'm not like the super young cat anymore. But the way that I go about it, the things that I'm willing to talk about, and the fact that people actually believe that I'm talented. Okay, so you got a whole wing of people that is and my name is Bomani. I'm Bomani Babatunde Jones, and I say that shit out loud, right? Like, I ain't backing off of none of this. I look like something those people believe they hate. And so people can then decide, okay, our base will look at this guy and not like him. And so we're just going to push out a bunch of content to please them because we don't like him. Now, of course, the funny part about that is I'm Southern, man. I did radio in North Carolina before I did this. I went to town in a school in a town with 1,500 people in Texas, right? Like, that's what I'm of. That's what I'm from. When I did that show in North Carolina when we first started, the radio station I worked for didn't even put out a press release. They was like ashamed to tell people that they had given me this job because they were so afraid that the white people were going to get mad, right? Or that they were going to give some pushback on it. All right, whatever. All I'm here to do is a radio show. So I did the show, and I did the show, and I did the show, and people would call in. mad at me about all kinds of stuff. You got your little racist agenda over there. Someone guy used to call and say that all the time. But then that dude started liking me because I had Ric Flair on as a guest. And he was like, if you like Ric Flair, then you must be okay with me. And I was like, oh, okay. So none of this actually makes any sense. And those people who called up starting off because they hated me, it's Raleigh, North Carolina. They ain't got but so many sports talk options. Eventually, they had to listen to me every day. And you know what happened? They were like, you know what? We actually kind of like this guy. It's not really such, he's not nearly as offensive and terrible. We don't agree all the time, but we have lots of things in common. We got all this stuff that goes. And so these white folks that are being dishonest about this stuff just want to create something out of you without ever actually engaging in the content. You see what I'm saying? Like that's the frustrating part about it is if those people actually hated me, we'd be talking about something. It ain't about me. It's about them and their belief in the racism of their peers, a racism that I actually don't believe. Not to that level. I mean, I definitely believe in racism. Don't get this twisted. But they look at it like I hate white people so much and I think white people are so racist. And they're the ones that every day demonstrate that they believe that these white people are so racist.
Wow.
Game Theory.
Bomani Jones.
HBO, definitely check it out, and we appreciate you for joining us.
What's the day and time?
I'm at Sunday at 11:30
Right after John Oliver.
Right after John Oliver, man. I ain't gonna lie, it's hard for me to stay up too. So HBO Max is there waiting on you in the morning.
All right, Bomani Jones. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.